It was the night of April 14, 1912. The Titanic was gliding through the icy waters of the North Atlantic for most passengers. This was the trip of a lifetime, the finest dining rooms, opulent staterooms, and promises of a new world awaiting them in New York. Among them was Eleanor Blythe, a young English woman traveling to meet her fiancé in America. She had just enjoyed a lavish dinner in the first-class dining room. As she stepped out onto the deck to get some fresh air, the night sky above her was as clear as a diamond. Meanwhile, James O'Connor, a lower-class steward from Belfast, prepared for the night shift below deck. He'd been working tirelessly since the ship set sail and hadn't had time to look at the grand luxury around him. He knew his job was to keep the ship running smoothly, but something in the air felt different. The cold wind bit through his jacket as he hurried to get back to the galley. A strange unease crawled up his spine. Suddenly, a jarring, horrifying crash. The ship shook violently. Eleanor, holding tightly to the railing, watched as a streak of white ripped through the darkness, the sound of it reverberating in her chest. An iceberg. The realization struck like cold steel through the heart of a dream. Back in the lower levels, James heard the muffled explosion of the collision. Crew members raced in every direction. For James, the instinct was clear: evacuate the lower decks, but there were no lifeboats down there. And there never were enough. Eleanor stumbled in the chaos, still trying to understand what had happened. The ship was massive, too big to sink, she told herself, but when she reached the deck again, a new panic set in. Lifeboats, only a handful of them. People were already being escorted to the boats, and as Eleanor looked over the edge of the ship, she saw the vastness of the ocean below her, swallowing everything. The Titanic would go down, and all she could think of was her family and fiancé who were thousands of miles away. Unaware of what was happening, James, amidst the pandemonium, caught a glimpse of Eleanor. She was near the first-class deck. The women and children were being loaded into lifeboats. But there was a terrible delay. There wasn't enough time. He knew it. He'd seen too many rich passengers refuse to board the boats, believing the Titanic couldn't possibly sink. Desperate, Eleanor found herself on the deck, clutching a leather bag that held nothing but memories. She was frozen, unsure whether to stay or go. The chaos around her intensified. People were yelling, crying, pushing to get to the lifeboats. A stewardess ushered her towards the line for women and children, but Eleanor hesitated. She remembered a woman she met earlier, Margaret, a mother traveling with her young son, and she decided she must help. As the first lifeboat was lowered into the water, Eleanor made a desperate choice. She left the lifeboat line and ran to Margaret, insisting she and her son get in first. The lifeboat was almost full, but Eleanor's insistence forced the crew to take her as well. As the boat began to lower, she looked back at the ship. The Titanic was beginning to tilt, but she didn't know if anyone would survive. Meanwhile, James was running against time. The crew was doing all they could to get as many people off the ship as possible. But the clock was ticking. He'd seen men who thought they'd be fine, that they'd survive somehow, but he knew the reality. There weren't enough boats, not enough time. He helped push a few last people into the last available lifeboats. He didn't stop until the cold gripped him. The water had already begun to creep up the Titanic's hull, a sight he would never forget. Finally, the inevitable happened. The Titanic, the so-called unsinkable ship, started to go down, slowly at first, but faster and faster. People who stayed on board were now clinging to whatever they could find. The darkness was overwhelming, and all that remained was the sound of the ship's collapse. Eleanor and Margaret floated on the lifeboat in silence. The cold stung their skin, and the weight of what they'd just witnessed hung in the air like a nightmare. The vast ocean stretched endlessly in front of them, and though they had survived the night, they knew nothing would ever be the same again. The Titanic was gone, and they'd left behind the world they once knew. As they drifted through the night, Eleanor could hear the distant cries of people still in the water. She felt a pang of guilt, but there was nothing she could do. She clutched Margaret's son, who was now asleep in her arms, unaware of the tragedy surrounding him. A distant ship, the Carpathia, finally arrived to rescue the survivors. But the weight of the loss, the lives swallowed by the sea, and the memories of the Titanic's arrogance would haunt those who lived through it forever.